Welcome, viewers and listeners, to the Art Conundrum podcast. I am your host, Sinclair, and I'm joined today by Kesi Mortley, one of the few sculpture students to come out of the Edna Manley College in recent years, right?
Yeah,
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 sculpture scarce in terms of volume of students. It has always been that way.
yeah.
I don't.
It, we started out with quite a few though for my year, and
Right.
then over the years it just dwindled, and I think we was just four of us in
Mhm.
final year, and
Right, right. Yeah, and that's something that always happens. The first year always strong, and as the years go by, the
hmm
numbers just dwindle. And that's not
yeah,
unique to sculpture either. But there are certain departments that I've noticed that where this is more of a chronic problem, like jewelry and sculpture.
mm,
Always have just a handful of students. Um,
yeah.
but anyways, this episode is not about the sculpture department. It's about you, Casey. So let's start out by um telling the viewers who is Casey Mortley.
Okay, well, I'm a lot of different things depending on the space that I'm in. But since this is an art podcast, I'm gonna just say that I am an art writer slash art critic and sometimes an artist. Sometimes I leave that part off because I'm not a practicing artist and I don't see myself doing that anytime soon. But
Okay,
yeah,
right. But I mean that doesn't make you any less of an artist, though. I mean,
I guess
so
so.
yeah, some creators they go years without creating, and they're still artists. It's just in a different
Mhm.
way. And it's just time as well. So it's interesting that you say you're an art writer, art critic.
Mhm.
That was actually one of the key factors in which why I decided to have you on the show,
Right.
because it's rare.
Mhm.
Art art writers are rare. I mean, especially in our group, right? Our generation of upcoming Jamaican artists or emerging Jamaican artists. There are not a lot of younger art writers, and even when it come on to seasoned art writers, there are not a lot either. So
Mhm.
it's extremely interesting to see somebody
Yeah.
very recent out of the college interested in
Yeah.
art writing. So I mean, talk to me a little about that. How did that start?
Okay. Well, I actually started in high school when, because I was a part of Teen Observer, and I think I just liked writing. But when I went into Teen Observer, I had to what's my topic that I'm gonna write about? And I was just like, okay, well, I really like art in high school, so I'll do that. I'll write about art. And it started off with me just like interviewing other young artists. So I had a weekly thing called Artist Profile, where each week it was a different artist, whether performing arts or visual arts, but people that were my age.
Hmm.
And then eventually I started writing about art shows. It wasn't like a review or anything, it was just like a generic report of an event. And then in my last years at Teen Observer, I started like reviewing art shows, and that was around the time I started Edna. So you could tell that okay, I started to be a little bit more knowledgeable about the topic, and how to critique art and how to write about it. And but then eventually I left Teen Observer because I was getting older and stuff. And then someone had approached me and was just like, hey, I really like your work. Would you like to write for us and review shows? And I was just like, yeah, of course. Like that such a cool opportunity for me. And then I started like really reviewing art shows, like writing in ways that I didn't even know I would have been able to. But then eventually, that publication, it was an online magazine, but eventually it ceased to exist. And I was just like left without a platform. I didn't even have access to those articles anymore because I never saved them or anything. And then, so I was just like, okay, like what? I really like to write, but I need a space to write. And I couldn't really find any platforms locally that would have allowed me to write in the ways that I wanted to write because everything was like a learning experience for me, and I liked being in spaces that would have allowed me the opportunity to grow and, experiment with my writing and stuff. So I couldn't really find that. So just like, I'm gonna just make my own then, might as well. And so that is how the Mortley review came about. And the main goal of it is to provide young artists like myself with the platform to like critically engage in their work. And because I realized that most of the young artists that I speak to, it's just like surface level. They don't really know how to delve a little bit deeper into their concepts, to like properly develop their ideas and so forth. So I wanted to provide them with a space to, engage in some real proper conversations about their work and just kind of add to whatever documentation that's happening in Jamaica. I don't really feel like the young artists are included in the conversations that are happening. I think that, there are opportunities for young artists. And like, for instance, and I resume the struggle, they have recent graduates from Manley and
Right, right. It's a
mixture,
mixture
yeah, a mixture
of old and young
of
artists.
everybody. And they have the artist talks that
Right.
give them a space to do that and stuff. And I mean, there are also other different spaces, but I
Mhm.
just think there should be more.
Right.
Like there should always be more for how many talents that's out there currently. I
Mhm.
just wish there was enough space and
Yeah.
more space, to
Yeah.
facilitate that development and that continuous growth. So,
Right. And you say a lot of things that echo some of the same issues I have as well.
mm,
That issue of documentation. And this is why the writing is so important because we we have a well documented past, of course, in the
right,
arts.
right.
But it seems like there came a point where I think there's been a huge fall off in terms of just the amount of engagement with with um contemporary artists. We don't have a lot
Mm,
of books about
yeah,
contemporary Jamaican artists, and we don't have. I think the National Gallery has a blog, right?
yeah, they do.
But what is that like, though? I should have probably looked at that before. I don't think that's. Is it
It,
active?
yeah, it's active. They would post about like upcoming shows, if they
Okay.
have artist talks, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'll
But
have to look into that. I'll have to. But
yeah,
you have like the Veerly Poopies, the Dakers.
mm,
Um, those are the those names are the only two I can think of in terms
yeah,
of writers.
yeah,
Um, and I don't think it should be a education issue either.
mm-hmm,
That is to say, I don't think you need a master's degree before you can start writing. So I'm glad you
right,
took up the initiative to do so.
yeah.
What has been the response from the community so far towards the Mortley review?
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure if there has been much outside of like, the people that are familiar with me and stuff. I made the Instagram page to kind of just like start it while I was getting the print issue ready.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, I think I'm not that open about it outside of
Mm-hmm.
like, an open Instagram page. Like you're really the first person that I'm like talking with about
Oh.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everything has kind of just been internal and
Mm-hmm.
just been because sorry
That's
for
all
the
right.
for the first issue, um I've been speaking with a lot of different artists, not just Jamaicans, but like people within the diaspora. Some there's one guy from Nigeria, there's a girl from she grew up in Haiti and ended up moving to the States after the earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a lot of different young people within the diaspora
Mm-hmm.
that I'm speaking with. So like the responses from them, they're just like, oh, that's such a really cool initiative, and like they're down for it, and anything that I need, like if I need to speak with them, if I need to or like they're willing
Mm-hmm.
to help.
Mm-hmm.
So far, based on the few that I've interacted with, like the responses have been good.
Mm-hmm.
But I outside of like internally, I don't really talk
Mm.
about it. I'd rather
Okay.
to just talk to the first issue, and then people will have something to talk about, and
Mm.
provide feedback on and stuff, support.
Oh, right. Okay. So most of your stuff exists on the Mortley Review website.
The website is currently down because
Okay.
the print issue is
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be like a quarterly thing,
Mm-hmm.
but the website would have. I'm I'm in the process of uploading like all my past
Mm-hmm.
reviews and stuff that I wrote about. But the website is gonna be updated regularly. So like
Mm-hmm.
with there's a review, if there's a show coming up, if I
Mm-hmm.
have like a casual interview with an artist,
Mm-hmm.
those kind of articles will be on the website, whereas the print issue is gonna be like more timeless works.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of an analysis
Right.
of.
Well, when you say print issue, what do you mean?
Yeah, I'm gonna have it available digitally, but I also
Oh,
want
you
to.
want a physical?
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to see my work printed out. I think young artists would appreciate seeing their work in like an actual printing and be like, look, my work is in this physical book.
Form.
It's not
Right.
just a
Right.
website thing. It's not just online in some digital space. Like they can have a physical thing to look
Right.
on.
Right.
You know,
Right. Right.
and I feel the same way. Like my article isn't just a website link. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's right here on my bookshelf. It's
Right.
it's
Right. Right.
outside of the digital world. So
Right. I mean, that's admirable. I mean, I think, and it's supposed to be costly. I mean, just maintaining a website alone, I know, is
mhm.
costly.
Yeah.
Um, so well, I guess maybe we can save that for later. Um, all right, let's get into the final year. No,
Mhm.
you graduated in 2017,
No, 2020 last year.
2020.
Yeah.
Wow, that sound. Oh, maybe I'm mixing up. Sorry. 2020. So Casey, what was your final year about, and what was the experience at Edna Manley? Maybe let's start with that. What has been your
Well,
experience at Edna Manley?
my experience has been so tough,
Mm-hmm.
and the hard parts came in final year. I'm not gonna lie, because I went into Edna so excited. Like I was so excited, so full of life. and second year was the same. It was a huge jump from first year. Like the workload was crazy, but I still enjoyed it. And then, but something happened in third year. I don't know, something happened and I just didn't enjoy it anymore. But I was, just still doing it because, today, like I want my bachelor's, and then final year happened and I just didn't want to be there at all. Like I thought about dropping out so many times during final year. Like I just didn't have any inspiration, any motivation, nothing at all. And so like trying to finish that project along with, COVID and everything and so much uncertainty, it was really hard. Like it was really, really hard. Like my lecturers know, like I was so open about not wanting to be there and, being depressed and everything. Like I was just always talking about that. So like, and but yeah, so when final year started, I was so depressed and like I had an initial idea for my project, which ended up getting scrapped in the early stages because I just couldn't answer the questions that my lecturers were asking me. So it's just like, you know what, maybe this topic isn't for me. Maybe I should look into something else. And then that was around the time that we also got a new lecturer, right? And he really
Greg
helped
Bailey.
me. Yeah, he really helped me to figure out what it is that I wanted to do because, like I said, I had no interest. And he was just like, did anything happen this year that, you took an interest in? And I was just like, well, yeah, when the sexual harassment thing happened earlier that year, it's just like, yeah, like that was the only thing that really, and so I just jumped with it because that, like, I was so passionate about that topic. Like, I was so into everything that was happening around campus and, looking at how the other lecturers were reacting to it, how the other students from the different schools were reacting to it and everything. So I was just like, yeah, that's gonna be my topic. And but I looked on it from the point of the victim and tried to visually show how they felt. I explored like a bunch of different poses that I want my figures to be in because my main thing was like, how can I show torment, turmoil, distress. Those emotions came from both gestures as well as the decay of the material because I used tissue and flour as like the paste and stuff. And yeah, over the months, it changed because if you look at what I presented for the first exam, it was like these really white sculptures. The only discoloration was probably like the dust that was on it or something. But if you compare it to what I presented at the final exam, there were like so much mold on it, growing and everything. And it was so weird because when the mold started growing, I was so stressed out. I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to fail. Like this was not in the plan at all. And I was trying to figure out how to kill the mold and it wasn't dying. And I was just like, you know what, I'm going to just leave it because I think that, like that's how I was feeling in the moment. Like I just felt like I was dying emotionally and everything. And I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna just, what, this is gonna be my diary. It's gonna be my journal. And I found that as the months progressed, like my work started mimicking how I was feeling inside. And so I kind of just let it be and allowed the mold to grow how it should, but I kind of try to direct the mold in a
Mm-hmm.
certain sense. So
Mm-hmm.
like I still wanted to add some human characteristics to the bodies. So like the general discoloration of like the thighs or the pubic area or the armpits and stuff. I try to like direct the mold in those areas. I also added pubic hair and try and like give it some of those human characteristics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Stuff. And yeah, so those are like the technical aspects of it.
Why was it important for them to look human or have some human characteristics?
Because they represented women,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed that direct link because they weren't. I wouldn't say they were like as realistic as possible, but you could tell that they were human figures. You could tell
Mm-hmm.
that they were women because of the breasts and like the main identity that I wanted them to have was that they were women. If they were a particular race or anything, never
Mm-hmm.
really mattered, which is why I kind of just like took the heads off of them. Like I just wanted to focus that they were women and
Mm-hmm.
they've been abused and this is the result of it. I had some text on it, which was like I collected some stories from my schoolmates that were affected by the situation, and
Mm-hmm.
I added it to the figures. So they're
Mm-hmm.
almost like these little tattoos or like
Mm-hmm.
these little journal entries on each
Mm-hmm.
woman,
Right.
and it was just such uh it was a crazy time.
Mm. I
And like
mean,
reading
yeah.
all these stories and everything. It was so wild seeing, like hearing these stories that I 100% believe in,
Mm.
and then in the real world, hearing all these people around you like discrediting the
Mm.
situation,
Mm.
and trying to shift the blame to something else, or just the general lack of accountability it was just a
Mm.
crazy time.
Interested. I think that's the first time anything like that ever happened over at
Yeah,
this at the college.
yeah, it
Um,
was about you though.
I mean that's I mean that we might talk about that at some point because I think that's too big to pass up, and I think too many people have opinions on it.
Yeah.
Um, your experience at Edna Manley though, it I can draw parallels with my experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
Coming excited, you have a completely different idea what art
Yeah.
is or what art should be. By the time you get to third year art or even second year, a different reality kind of hit you, and you
Yeah.
realize it's not what you thought it was, and in
Yeah.
fact it's a path that is very difficult given the general lack of opportunities to earn. I know that's also a big issue everybody unanimously face. Well, most of us anyways, unless you're a
Yeah.
part of the 1% who have been able to find a audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I hear this experience come from a lot of students as well. Very similar torment,
Yeah.
anger, stress,
Yeah.
depression. These are always the words I hear. What do you think is at the core of this? I mean, what
What
do you think is causing this?
I mean, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus or anything, but I think it's directly linked to our lecturers
Yeah.
because I'm going to give you a reason why. For when we started sculpture, we
Mm-hmm.
had so many lecturers like just in and out of the place, and then over time, we lost Jeff, and then Chong Night was just like not as present as he used to be for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And then we we only got Mr. Watson up to a certain point. And then
Mm-hmm.
so when we went into final year. And then we had Miss Daly, but she had left to do her um, master's or PhD or something. So when we went into to final year, we were just like, who is going to teach
Yeah.
us?
No
We
idea who
don't.
the lecturer was.
Yeah, and then my friends, like I had a friend in photography. It was the same thing. They had a lecturer who was like, who did online class, who was like overseas and did online class. And that's just so weird.
Yeah,
Like, that
yeah.
is so strange. And I always say that I feel like the Viscom department gets the most support when it comes on to like instructors and of course painting. Like, you guys have so many painters. You guys have, like, I've never seen anyone go into painting departments and come out a failure. Like, you guys just have everything there for you, you know? And I've just like heard so many stories. I remember one critique, my friend, so it's a sculpture critique, and she broke down and she was just like, she feels like from she started and not till now, like she hasn't learned anything, like she feels so dumb. And honestly, I agreed with her because I feel like most of what I learned was based on my outside reading because as a art writer, like I was just always reading, always engaging with a lot of different um articles online and stuff. And I remember when I said it, and they're just like, "Oh well, this is college. You can't expect to be spoon fed." But it's just like, help me a little bit. Like, I am asking something. Don't send me outside of what you should be providing me.
Yeah.
And it honestly was my mistake thinking I was going into Edna to learn how to do technical aspects of work. Like,
Well, why you
it
think
was,
it was a
it was
mistake? Why you think it was a mistake?
because they didn't teach me how to do anything outside of like you welding workshop and you wood workshop. Like, they just gave you assignments and said do it. The deadline is XYZ. Like, they did not teach me anything. The only thing though that I would say I learned was drawing because when I started drawing, I was very bad. But now, like, I'm so good. So like our drawing instructors were good. But when it comes on to sculpture, I cannot tell you what they taught
Yeah,
me. Like,
yeah.
they didn't teach me anything.
Interesting. I think there are a few lecturers who listens to the podcast, so it'll be interesting. Well, most of them don't comment or respond
Mm,
anyways, but still interesting. It would be interesting to see the reaction or hear the reaction when they hear this. But this is what I hear from most people. A lot of people question whether or not they learned anything over the 4 years. And of course, they learn things. I mean, you pick up little things here and there. But I think what people mean when they say they don't learn anything is, all right, so the disparity, I think, comes at the high school level. Because at the
yeah.
there seems to be a disconnect. Because at the high school level, it's very traditional in terms of the approach.
Yeah. It's
At least most schools approach art very traditional. And you leave with that, right? Because you have no great wider knowledge of the art world unless you're somebody who was very
yeah.
interested and you were sure that this is what you wanted to do. You go out and you
Yeah.
do all of the reading and research. Most people came in thinking that, it's business as usual. You paint, you hang it up and whatever. When you start get introduced to all these other different ways of making art, it is kind of an
Mm-hmm.
overload. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
one of the parts, I think students, I won't throw the lecturers under the bus entirely because I think a lot of
Mm,
students come through the school and they really do waste a lot of time and they don't really follow up with the thing. And I don't think you should reach third year and just figuring out that you're not really interested. I think you have to make that decision as early as possible.
yeah.
Um, and that's not a blanket statement. That's not for everyone because circumstances might dictate how that go. But um, I, I won't throw the lecturers under the bus completely, but I do understand what you're saying. Um, for the longest while, even I had one painting course that was more technical than the others, and it was literally for 1 year. It was in
Mm,
second year, and after you move on from that, that's the end of that. You know,
yeah,
of course you
yeah,
have drawing classes, but when you're doing drawing classes, really, you come, you sit down, they tell you to draw the model.
yeah.
There's no
Practice.
demonstration of technique,
Yeah.
or even just ways of approaching it, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I would love to hear the reasoning behind that. Maybe we need to talk to a lecturer because I wonder what the methodology is. Is it that students should develop their own way of doing it? But if they do, then it can't be wrong because you that's what
Yeah,
you wanted them to do what they can or how they want to do it. So it can't be wrong technically, right? It's a
yeah,
conundrum. It's a
yeah.
conundrum. Um, all right. So Casey, what's happening now with the Mortley review? I mean, is it
Well, it's almost done. I've been working on it for so long. It's almost done. And I'm planning on doing some test prints
mhm,
by the end of November because I
mhm,
want to at least have one finished thing, like a finished copy of what it's
mhm.
gonna look like, what's gonna be in it, because I would like to get some sponsorship for it.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah.
if it is that I don't get sponsorship, then I will dip into my own money
Mm-hmm.
to
That's how you
like get
go.
it
That's how you go.
started.
Yeah,
Yeah, but hopefully I get sponsorship for it, so I don't have to do it, and I can just like go all out from the get go.
yeah.
And yeah, but that's the
The,
time for the rest of
yeah,
it.
the reason why I ask is because I know at one point I saw you were posting very often.
Mhm.
Um, and I saw the Mortley review come up more times than not.
Mhm.
But then after a while, I just didn't see it anymore. So I was wondering if maybe you were planning on scrapping the whole thing.
No,
And,
that would
and
never happen.
okay, so that's why it was important for me to reach out because I
Yeah.
think it's a good initiative, and I honestly wouldn't want to see you drop it halfway, especially now that we have more people seemingly interested in doing this kind of thing.
Mhm.
Maybe a collective effort might work well for all of us.
Mhm.
That's something I'm thinking about because
Yeah.
I think for the longest while as artists, maybe we just trained to think that we should do everything by ourselves, and
Um.
there's
Yeah.
always this isolation, um, especially when you're making work. But we also isolate ourselves in when we're doing things as well, and I think that needs to stop. I think the best way forward is to have a collective effort, know what we're about as emerging
Mm,
artists, what what
yeah.
what what kind of mark we want to leave on the art world, and not just
Mm,
Jamaican art world, the wider art world.
yeah.
So I love the initiative. I can't hide that fact, and I hope you continue it. And I would love to have you on again, Casey, if that's
Yeah.
possible.
Of course, it's been
All right.
fun.
Yeah,
Come
man.
back.
I wanted to keep it short. This is just kind of an introduction. If you come on back on the show, we can talk about some more serious stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so Casey, where can the people find you on social media or on the internet?
Well, I have an Instagram, but it's private.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I have another Instagram, but it's also private, and I don't post on it. I have a Twitter, but it's also private. So I don't really know what to tell
What
you.
about the Mortley review? Is that private?
But yeah, they can find it on Instagram at
Right,
the Mortley Review.
right. Is all right. So viewers, listeners, there you have it. Casey Mortley. It was a lovely talk. Of course, I am your host, Tuani Sinclair, and this has been another episode of Art Conundrum. Um, we soon start uploading on here. Right as we are getting it. Um, we soon upload to iTunes and Spotify and all of that. Because this is a podcast, so we want to hit all the podcast um platforms. All right, so Casey, thank you for stopping by. It was nice chatting, and that is our episode.